21 Leinster, 5 Connacht, 4 Munster, 4 Ulster, and 1 new cap. If it's not broke, don't fix it. But let's start the show. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Interpro Show, back once again this week for a very special bonus pod because we had an Ireland squad announced today. Andy Farrell naming his squad for the Autumn Nations Series internationals, and because of that, I have assembled Adam and the returning David back in the hot seat again to make sure that we get ourselves talking as well as the people talking. Now, the squad may have been announced like 4.5 hours ago as we record, but that doesn't mean much. Adam, quickly um sum up your thoughts as you kind of read that squad about an hour after the rest of us because you actually did some work today.
Yeah, I was working in the school today, so I saw the squad and just sort of went, I don't know what I was expecting, but I just sort of was like, meh. It was the general feeling. And then then I looked at some of the players getting picked and I just went, huh? It's sort of like that feeling with Ireland squads at the minute where we don't play teams like Georgia and Portugal, where the teams of the squad seem very fun, whereas these ones just seem painfully predictable. So yeah, that's painfully predictable. That's how I'm gonna put it.
I think that's very fair. And David, we didn't have you here yesterday to give us your predictions as to who you thought would get in or anything like that, but we have you here now to tell us why Andy Farr might be right or Andy Farr might be wrong. I don't know, but your initial thoughts, what were they?
My initial thoughts were it was a mostly conservative squad. I mean, I think anyone who was hoping for a massive change from Andy Farrell at this stage was probably not paying attention to most of the squads the man has selected up until now. There's a bit of a mix in there. Like you said, there's only the one new cap, Paddy McCarthy. He'll feel very happy. He was one of the only bright sparks in the start to Leinster season. He'll feel fairly vindicated because of that. I think Michael Millen can probably feel pretty hard done by considering his start with Munster. But other than that, in the squad, the likes of Tom Ahern, obviously not a neophyte, but because of injury, hasn't probably had the Ireland career that he would have liked to have at this stage. It's great to see him get in there. A much older player, but Nick Timoney has been someone who's struggled to get into Ireland squads and stay in them, despite being such a standout performer for Ulster. So I think he'll be very happy to have gotten his way back in there. I think Keane Prendergast can probably count himself a little bit lucky considering the end of Connacht's last season and the recent performance in Cardiff, though I don't think there's really any chance that results up to that recently were determining anyone who's going to be in this squad. For me, I think the main reaction to the squad was kind of a meh. Yeah, that's what I kind of mostly expected it to be. I'm quite personally happy to see Tommy O'Brien in there. As we were discussing off air, not a young man, but a young to the international stage. He's had a good run with Leinster at the end of last season, the start of this season as well. Probably the only player who played in any way well against the Stormers in that first game. And he's finally managed to do what he's never been able to do before, which is string together more than 2 or 3 games without getting an injury. So it's great to see someone like him in there. The Ireland backline has often been kind of deemed to not be the fastest backline. He's got pace. He can bring a bit of speed on the wing. How he fits in with Mac Hansen, that'll be interesting, particularly with Hugh Keenan out. There's always a possibility of Hansen switch to 15. So that could be interesting. I think if there's a disappointment for me in the backline, it's probably at centre. We've had four really good centres, three who've gotten the majority of the caps, but Stuart McCluskey has never been far off. But all three of them are the wrong side of 30. Gary Ringrose is the youngest. I think he's just 30 at the on the nose, but Bundiaki's 35, Henshaw's 32, McCluskey I think is 32 or 33. So they're all still motoring. They're all still playing well. You don't really necessarily have to drop a player when they're still going well. But if there was an eye to the future, that centre line is unfortunately one that is going to age out almost at the same time. So I think we could have probably seen a little bit more mixing up from there. That being said, the first match is against the All Blacks. It's in Chicago. It's 9 years after the first time Ireland beat them. I don't think Andy Farrell was ever going to take any risks with this one.
Yeah, well, we'll get onto all that a little bit and the position breakdown and that New Zealand game. But just really quickly, for anyone who may have had their hand trapped in sand and didn't hear the squad just yet, here it is. So it starts off with the forwards with Thomas Ahern. Tom Ahern. We're calling got him Tom Ahern. Like let's not beat around the bush. Ryan Baird, Finlay Bealham, Tyke Byrne, Jack Boyle, Thomas Clarkson, Jack Conan, the returning captain Caelan Doris, Tyke Furlong, Ian Henderson, Ronan Kelleher, Gus McCarthy, the uncapped Paddy McCarthy, Andrew Porter, Keane Prendergast, James Ryan, Dan Sheehan, Nick Timoney, and Josh van der Fleer. In the back line, it starts as it has done for years with Bundy Aki. Then Keelan Blade is a inclusion that was not really expected, not touted on this podcast yesterday, anyways. Craig Casey and Jack Crowley are there, as is Kieran Frawley and Jameson Gibson Park. Matt Hansen, Robbie Henshaw, James Lowe, Stuart McDusky, Tommy O'Brien, Jamie Osborne, Sam Prendergast, Gary Ringos, and Jacob Stockdale. Gents, like we get into breakdown in terms of, provincials and all that, but it's a decent squad. I think the big takeaway is it is quite small. And David, I'll start with you there because you were saying in the WhatsApp you think Ireland will go bigger and they will expand the squad. As of right now, it's 34. There's three training panelists: Edwin Adogbo, Brian Leeson, Shane Bolton. All those players will miss round five of the URC. Yeah, they'll miss round five of the URC. All those 37 or whatever players. Do you Do you believe there will be changes that are going to be made to this? Do you think this is, let's take the first game, first two games, and then go from there? Because, like, the Japan game being second is a kind of a strange one because it's right after Chicago. So you're prepping for it. But at the same time, you know, if you do bring lads in, you're conscious that it's Australia, South Africa after that, and it's going to be back to full strength again.
Yeah, that is definitely maybe not unfortunate. If your goal is to just win all the games, it's probably stacked up reasonably well, and that you have the bookends of the two hardest matches. Hopefully Ireland don't disimprove over the course of this series the way they did over the course of the Six Nations, considering who's waiting for them at the end. But yeah, I just feel like, look, it was said in the press release that this is the squad for the Chicago game and the Quilter Autumn Nation series, but I just feel like there's probably scope. Like, injury is going to play a factor, so I'll caveat it by saying this is not even allowing for injuries. Someone will get injured at some point over the course of these four games. You can't play New Zealand and South Africa and get away without getting roughed up. But even allowing for that, I think Andy Farrell probably had, we would hope he had a budget. He's flying them across the Atlantic Ocean to Chicago. It's a big trip, it's a big tour. Or sorry, it's not a big tour, it's one match. So how many players you bring, there may have been some conversation, or even not conversation, but like a nod to provincial coaches. As you said, any player going on this is going to miss round five of the URC. That's different for different teams. I think Ulster will probably rue the fact that they don't have their strongest players down in South Africa for that second match down there. But I think just from pure economic point of view, they're bringing 37 lads across. That's a lot of people to get on a plane and across, considering only 23 of them are going to play. And yeah, I think if depending on how that first game goes, if it goes well, if the Japan game goes well, I know Australia are still building, but I think there is scope for other players to be brought in, whether or not they get capped, whether or not they actually play, or if they just become the proverbial 24th man for every match. It would be a toss up. The fact that they have training panelists in there shows that there's at least scope for that. But yeah, I do think there's a possibility, and I'll say that I think that there's a reasonable chance that either probably either straight away when they come back or between Japan and Australia, I could see scope for players, particularly players who maybe stand out in the next 2 weeks, to I don't know, to worm their way in. And maybe there's players who go on the trip and worm their way out. That's happened too. But yeah, no, I think Andy Farrell is not beyond being flexible if he feels the squad could do it with a couple of additions.
Potentially, I might be one to kind of say that that's a little bit wishful thinking, but I do understand your logic and I do understand the point about economics. Although at the same time, and Adam, you can agree to this as well. Like we did say, maybe you bring 30 lads to Chicago, and if you need anyone else, you fly them over the week of the game, that kind of thing. But anyways, that's a different one. Probably the main talking point, Adam, and yes, it's been done to death, but this is an Ireland squad of 37 players, including training panel. 21 are currently with Leinster. And if you look at it as a depth chart as I have on here, granted it's a little bit unfair to like Ronan Kelleher, Jack Conan, Robbie Henshaw, even Sam Prendergast. We don't know who's going to be the starting 10. Um, like this without Joe McCarthy, without Hugo Keenan, and there's 21 Leinster players in the squad, there would be a perception, whether we agree or not, that to the armchair or the cultural fan, to use a more flavorful term than armchair fan, who tunes in for the New Zealand game and they're seeing this many Leinster players that like they may not feel represented. What's your thoughts on that? Because obviously there's only four Ulster players there, four Ulster club legends. Don't get me wrong, four Munster players there as well, and six or five Connacht in the main squad. Do you think that's fair? Do you think Andy Farrell should look at that and say, do you know what? Maybe we need to do something about it because yes, it's up to him to get wins. But if your message in 2023 was inspire a nation, surely that's a message for every national team that's ever played any fixture ever.
I there was this whole thing last week. I don't know if you all saw about Andy Farrell speaking about how important it is to pick players from the north of Ireland, from Ulster, and how important that is into the whole scope of things.
I'm not
There's
going
this,
to touch that one. You could take that
but
entirely.
but he spoke about how important it was. But as coaches go, he's the player. He's the coach that's picked the least amount of Ulster players I've ever seen in any Ireland like coaching setup. Even Declan Kidney played a lot more Ulster players than he did. And I thought when I was younger he picked no Ulster players. But when I think about back to then, it's like Tommy Bowe, Trimble, Roy Best, Stephen
Paddy
Ferris,
Wallace.
Paddy Wallace. But yeah, it's one of those where Craig Gilroy as well gave Craig Gilroy a start. It's one of those where I just don't. I don't necessarily feel represented by this by the Ireland squad, and it's no harm to whoever players has been getting picked, but I don't feel represented by a third choice Leinster hooker. I'm sorry, I know that he's really good. However, I'm just not. I just don't feel represented by him. I feel represented by the guys that we know that are stalwarts and they will come in. David's about to bring in his lawyer, it looks like. But I feel represented by the ones that are like I'd say Irish rugby legends. You've got your likes of your Tag Burns that are always there. You've got your likes of your Andrew Porters, Dan Sheehan, Furlong, the ones that are like really good. However, there's no scope in picking third choice Leinster players. It just feels like there's all the eggs in one basket, and it makes sense that if it would make sense, let's say, if all the players were reshuffled around provinces, that's how it was at some point. You know, like your best player would have went like, for example, Isaac Boss went to Leinster. You had, you know, you had Tag Byrne going to Scarlets from Leinster to Scarlets. Granted, bit of an odd one. Then
Robbie
back to
Henshaw to
Munster.
Connacht is a good example, I suppose.
Yeah, Robbie Henshaw as well. Robbie Henshaw from Connacht going to Leinster. That's picking the best player out of that one. Mick McCarthy, not Mick McCarthy.
Mike.
Was Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy going from Connacht to Leinster as well. That's one that's always sort of forgotten about. It's just it doesn't make any sense to me. Like fair enough. I'm going to watch the Ireland games. I'm going to, but there is going to be a case that we are going to implode in the next World Cup because we're going to pick a bunch of players that are going to be about 37 by that time. That
Well,
backline is going to
that's two different issues, and we will get onto that in a minute. But I do
yeah.
think you've made some good points there. And David, I know you're not going to stand up here because I know you. You're not that type of person and say, I don't care what Adam feels like. He's not allowed to feel these feelings. You're like Adam's entitled to that opinion as much as you're entitled to say, yes, I feel represented by Gus McCarthy in the squad. We're not picking on Gus, very talented young player.
Yeah, that's what I
But
mean.
that
They're talented,
discourse
but
has been around Irish rugby for a while, and unfortunately, it's not going to change anytime soon, it feels like. And I think what I would have said to you in the past is where I draw the line is if our provincial starters at Connacht, Munster, Ulster aren't getting anywhere close, then that's, I think, where you alienate the provincial fans. But once they're winning, once Ireland are winning, you look back 2023, very similar makeup to the squad. People don't really mind. But when you're on the downhill side of that, they've climbed their Everest. They're coming back down. That's when people start to care again, and that's where it gets a little bit slippery. And I think Michael Milne and Paddy McCarthy is a great example. Paddy McCarthy will be a very good player. He is a good young prop. Michael Milne has put his hand up. He moved Province to get that chance. He doesn't get that chance, and it's like, well, that's where the air comes out of the balloon, I suppose. And again, I'm not saying that one side is right and one side is wrong, but you can absolutely understand the frustrations, even if you can make very valid rugby opinions for not just the 37 players there, but about 60 players in Irish rugby.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, in a entirely non the word compromise keeps coming to my head, but it's not the right word, condescending, in an entirely non-condescending way. Feel your feelings. It's absolutely okay to feel that way. And I have to say and acknowledge from my perspective that when you say you could feel represented by Gus McCarthy, I don't feel represented by any of them because they're a bunch of South Dublin schoolboys. I'm from the north side. I don't need to feel
Well,
I don't need to feel
geography lesson here, David. We won't
I
get into
don't
what part of North Dublin you're from, but
I don't no comment. I don't need to feel represented. But that's the point. I can say that because I am. I am represented by them. They're from Dublin. They're from Leinster. At the end of the day, when I go, oh, the representation doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me because I have it. So
Yeah.
I can't really speak from the perspective of someone like Adam or yourself or Ben who watches their own team play every week, and in the case of Munster and Ulster this season, watches their team winning, and then turns around and goes, "Why don't we get to play Irish rugby?" And like you said, as long as Ireland are winning, that's kind of the ultimate response. We were having a discussion earlier about comparing how different countries run their own national system, and I said the only way I really compare us to other countries is if we beat them or not, because the systems in the countries are so different. But that is dependent on that, and while that is the perfect answer, when that is your only answer, once that does stop, that becomes a problem, and then all the frailties come out. It's like any fight in any relationship. Once a fight comes along, all of the old frailties and all the old arguments come out, and this one is always going to be a part of it. And I think Ireland, because of the quite um significant or the quite clear geographical gaps between the four provinces and the pride that the people in each of those provinces have, not to mention the additional complications of Northern Ireland and the fact that rugby as a sport has done so well to be an all Ireland sport. I think it's unavoidable that when 21 players are from the same province, there's going to be a degree of, ah, come on now, why am I watching this team again? I don't want to watch Leinster just play in blue or in green.
great
So
Freudian slip.
He's admitted it. He's admitted it.
so I yeah, no, I understand that, and I think the Michael Milne point is probably a fair one because on paper the flip between Michael Milne and Paddy McCarthy, I think before the start of the season probably would have been slightly more tipped towards Milne. I think McCarthy probably did have a pretty good start to the season, but the fact that it is a coin flip, it's a 50-50 shot, and that he picked the guy who didn't leave to try and further his career. It just, if there is a message to be sent, and I don't think that Andy Farrell is even thinking of that level. I don't think he cares really. I think he's just picking the squad that he wants to pick, and there's not as much um, second order thinking going on. But like, I think if there was a message to be sent, that was not the right one, and I hope it doesn't dampen the other effects because like the likes of Milne and Lee Barron going down to Munster, the likes of Cian Prendergast much early in his career, moving over to join the Connacht Academy, like that's a good thing. It's unavoidable that Leinster has a larger population than Connacht, and so because of that, we should see um, a bit more movement internally for the sake of the four provinces and Leinster itself. So I fully understand that. I don't necessarily agree on each individual selection call, but yeah, no, I totally get that. And like as a Leinster fan, it would be completely disingenuous of me to say, I know it's all fine. We should just keep it picking the Leinster lads. And it's particularly, as I think I said in the chat earlier, harder to justify when not only are Ireland not winning, but Leinster aren't winning either. So you're like, well, really, why are you picking these guys? But yeah, I think this squad is probably, if I had to give one caveat to this squad, most of this squad aren't just Leinster players. They're Lions as well. And I think there's a lot of lads who haven't played there, but they have, like by any real metric, they have such a tremendous amount of test capital in the bank at this stage that particularly for this game, I don't think there was ever really a chance that Andy Farrell wasn't going to pick those guys. I think where the understandable consternation comes in is in the selection of a Paddy McCarthy or a Gus McCarthy, or not in this, or in the failure to select someone like, or to select to the full squad someone like Edmund Dogbo and Shane Bolton. They're training panelists, great. Why not just add them to the full squad? If you're flying them to New Zealand or flying them to Chicago already, just put them in the squad. Like you're not going to cap all 30 of them anyway. Just throw them in there. So, yeah, my read on the way that these squads have been selected is that Andy Farrell, I'm sure somebody does. I don't think Andy Farrell thinks about these things at that level. I think his number one mandate is to win every single game, and that's really all he thinks about when he's selecting.
Well, very good points, lads, and I would agree. I As I said there, I think there's always the element of once you're winning, people don't mind, but when you stop winning, there's the other side of it. I think there's the whole like culture war that started last year in Irish rugby, and it was at 10, and we'll talk about 10 from a rugby perspective. But every one of us and Ben and probably Lee, our producer over in Wales, will be able to tell you it got out of hand last year. It was
It
insane.
did.
Like Ireland beat the worst Welsh team since Tom Jones was a child, and we were talking about how good 110 was because lads had to be seen to be right. And that's Sam Prendergast didn't play bad, but it was a culture war. And I think that could well fold over into this kind of, I know Leinster Green was kind of a cliche, but seeing as you said it, I think it is, fair to say, even if I don't agree myself. And that could be the next section of this. And then you're into the whole like sport in the social media age and all that kind of stuff that we don't have enough time for. What we do have time for is to run through the Ireland squad and the depth and the holes and the strengths and weaknesses. We've touched on loose head prop. Porter and Boyle were nailed on. McCarthy over Mill. It is what it is. It's done now. Gus McCarthy probably benefited from Lee Barron's injury, I'm going to say. I actually think Lee Barron is probably the one who's most likely to put his hand up there, especially when Tom Stewart has been on the periphery for Ireland for so long. If they were going to go to anyone, it would probably be someone new. Um, Tight head prop. I'm going to come to you first, Adam, because waiting in the wings, Ireland has Ollie Yeager, Jack Ainger, Tom O'Toole, and Scott Wilson. Those four lads alone are international quality, and no one will tell me otherwise. But you have Tyg Furlong, 9 lines tests in a row. You got Finlay Bealham was on the Leinster, Tom Clarkson as well. There is probably a element of, yeah, you could have went with a fourth. You could have put in someone new there. You could have tried someone. Scott Wilson still has never received an Ireland call up. Tom O'Toole has never really done much wrong for Ireland. That position, would you have gone with those three? Would you have gone different? How do you see it?
I would have went with Clarkson and Furlong, but I wouldn't have went with Balaam. I think Clarkson has a very good chance this season to overtake Furlong in that sort of starting berth for three for Leinster, um, only because of Furlong's injury troubles and things like that. So I'd say Clarkson makes sense there. Bealham, necessarily, did he have a good Lions tour? It was sort of bang average in that sense. But as you said, you've listed four players there that are of international quality. Scotty Wilson not having an Ireland cap, in my opinion, it doesn't make
It's
any
criminal.
sense.
It's
It doesn't
criminal.
make any sense at all. Um, it's the fact that like he needs to kick on for Ulster, but then even then we were speaking about how it is difficult when you kick on for Ulster to be, a player in that squad in general. But even not having him as like a training panelist, you don't really see props as training panelists. Do you? It's only like second row, back row, possibly fly half, and then two centers or a wing. But Shane Bolton's already capped, so that doesn't really make sense for a training panel either, in my opinion. But back onto tight head prop. I feel like we're going to have a big issue with tight head prop, the same that we have with centers, and the fact that it's really different playing test level rugby at tight head prop than it is at club rugby, and we do need to train up those players like your Scotty Wilsons. Ollie Yeager could probably match his own, and Tom O'Toole hasn't done anything wrong, and I feel like he's played really well this season anyway. So it's a difficult position, but I don't think I would have had Finlay Bealham there, to be perfectly honest. I think Clarkson
Yeah,
makes sense.
I think that's fair. I just moved into the second row, David. We mentioned it beforehand. Cormac Izuchukwu's injury is a pain. Well, obviously, because you got a pain in the foot, like, but it's an absolute dose. Joe McCarthy's one. No one's really talking about it, but with the placenta um fasciitis, I can't
Yeah.
remember the name of it. My
Plantar
apologies.
fasciitis, yeah.
That's one that can take months. Like if
Yeah.
he's not back for the Six Nations, you wouldn't be surprised. So Ian Henderson's in, and Ian Henderson has long been the scapegoat. Like this lad has 80 caps. He's been on two Lions tours. Like he's not a bad player, but this was probably the one moment you're like, geez, we've good second row depth. But you notice when two lads are out and you're going back to Henderson and you're like, well, that was the right call because Darren Murray's probably a bit small. Joe Joyce probably past the age profile to win an Ireland cap. We've seen that before. Harry Sheridan didn't really kick on last year. I believe he had like college studies at the back end of last season. So like
Yeah.
fair enough if that got in the way. We're starting to look at second row now. It's like it could be very good. Tom Ahern probably is test level. Like he's probably ready to go. It was Chuku is, but you're just starting to notice now for the first time. It's like, oh, maybe it's not as deep as we thought because I'm not sure if we could have went past four with this selection.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that. You're right, it is interesting when two players go out, you have depth until you don't. Henderson, I mean, I checked his age there. He's still only 30. Check. Is he
32.
30, 32, 32, 33?
Mm.
So young, but not that young. Like he's up there as well. I think Ian Henderson, if I'm remembering correctly, his unfortunate habit was he used to be a common bench player who would come on and give away a penalty, and it was the first thing he did in the game. And I think that went against him. Where in the main, he's a very good player. He's also a phenomenally powerful player. There's a compilation on YouTube if anyone wants to look it up, where he is dubbed the Destroyer. He's an incredibly powerful lock. So it's not a drop to go to him. I thought it was kind of odd because of his age profile, because of selection for Ireland recently, where it seemed like Tadhg Beirne, Joe McCarthy, James Ryan kind of were the lockdown three. One person who's in there now, and we actually have him in a different position, is Ryan Baird. Andy Farrell has gone to him before. He's similar to Tom Ahern, where they can both play lock, they can both play six. So I wouldn't be surprised if Baird ends up, if something happened, I could see Ryan Baird because Andy Farrell has gone to him at lock before. I wouldn't be hugely shocked if he went to him again. But beyond that, yeah, I would be interested to see. Because I'm not 100% sure. There's the Murray brothers in Connacht. There's like we have Dermot Mangan and Brian Deane in Leinster. They played those games at the start of the season where I think you saw that they're very good players, but I don't know if they're quite Ireland level yet, if they ever get there. Um, so yeah, I think it's about as steady as selection as we got, but there's nothing. Tom Ahern excites me, but he almost excites me more as a flanker than as a lock. So as a lock pairing, I think we're probably looking at James Ryan and Tadhg Beirne to start with Ian Henderson on the bench, or vice one of those switched around. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the lock pairing for the whole thing, really. But with Tom Ahern and Ryan Baird, I think trading either starting sixes or on the bench replacement role. But yeah, no, the lock position is yeah, it's one where two players go and you're like, oh, there's not actually that many of them going around, and the ones who are there aren't aren't the young, Tadhg Beirne, another guy who's just been this force of nature for Ireland, for Munster, for the Lions, also not a young man. So yeah, I think this is a team that can win. It's a lock grouping, a team more broadly that's really suited for this pairing. But in a few years, I think it could look very different, and I don't think anybody really is 100% sure who's going to be.
Well, that's where we kind of, when we get to previewing the New Zealand game, we'll be looking at like Tadhg Beirne. He plays his best rugby midway through the season when it's a lot of games. He'll have a maximum of 80 minutes going into Chicago.
Yeah,
Do you know? Like that we kind of know now. Like it's kind of been
yeah.
revealed now. So that's a factor. I'll kind of run through the middle third next, like Baird,
I
Van der
will also just
Fleer.
say on Burn,
Oh,
just
go on.
on Burn though, I will say he played a lot of rugby last season,
He did.
and
Yeah.
I think you
Yeah.
could see it by the end of it that he was tired. So a little bit of a rest, probably not a terrible thing for Ty Burn, but
Even
yeah, in
even if he
general,
plays better tired, weirdly.
yeah, it's just rises to the
You think
level.
back to the Northampton game in Franklin's Gardens where I think he was one of the ones that was ill.
Yeah,
and had one of his best ever games in a red shirt when
took
Munster's
as a
European kit
challenge.
when Munster's
Yeah.
European kit used to be red. But like that back row is pretty much as expected. The only notes are, of course, Brian Leeson is in as a training panelist. Is good to see. I thought he started the season really well. Um, Maybe someone like Max Deegan could have got in or Gavin Coombs, but I do think with Deegan, less so than Timony and Coombs, but Deegan is still in that conversation. Doesn't really matter how good these lads are at club level; they're just not going to get in, and that is what we have to accept at this stage. Like I can see David McCann breaking into an Ireland squad in 2 years' time. But I can see Gavin Coombs playing his best season for Munster next year and not breaking it. Do you know? I think
Yeah.
that's where we're at. And I think with Timoney, yes, he's in there. But you have to remember Nick Timoney was in no Ireland squads in 2023, having been capped in 2022. He was in every Ireland squad in 2024, doesn't get capped, and finally did this year after missing out the original Six Nations squad. Like he's had this like really frustrating time of it. Like, of course, Gavin Coombs and himself would probably, maybe they'll be the next podcast. What I would have done in Ireland camp if I was in there. That is me taking a joke before anyone takes that for being serious. Halfback is as expected, but was there going to be a change of 10? Potentially. Maybe Jack Murphy could have got in. We mentioned that before we started, but probably best that he's down Johannesburg playing for Ulster against the Lions. Kieran Frawley hasn't played a lot of 10. Is he even a 10? Maybe he's a 15. Maybe they're just firmly, it's our two tens, and Frawley might cover for one of the games. Maybe he's the 15 cover. Although I would worry about his pace. Is Craig Casey injured? Is that why Keenan Blade got in? Like Craig Casey's back training apparently, but not probably not enough to feature at the weekend. I said it. I would have went with Nathan Doak. He's put his hand up. He nearly has a century of Ulster games. He's playing better than he ever has. Reward him, but that's a different issue. But centre, David, you touched on it beforehand, so I'm going to let you take this one. You have four centres in there. Among those missing out are Jude Postlethwaite, James Hume, Dan Kelly, Tom Farrell, Cathal Ford, Hugh Gavin, Hugh Cooney, a lot of quality, but these are four guys over the age of 30, and you could whittle off, again, like tight head prop, four guys under the age, well, Tom Farrell is over the age of 30, but three guys under the age of 30 who are absolutely, in my opinion, test level in, or you could say four, Postlethwaite, Gavin, um, Dan Kelly, and I forgot, oh, James Hume.
I was
Apologies,
gonna
James Hume.
say,
So
no,
yeah, just your thoughts on that one, David, because that's the other position that I think is standing out to a lot of people.
Yeah, it's I don't know, it feels like we've kind of slow marched our way into it. It's probably not a super common thing to have happen where you have four players who are all about as good as each other and that level is world class and they're all almost around the same age, like to within 2 or 3 years. I think the biggest gap is Bundyaki is 35. I think Gary Ringrose is 31, 30, 31. But they're all between those two ages. So unfortunately, that means they're all going to age out around the same time. Ringer, even being the youngest, is almost counteracted by the fact that he's been playing for a really long time. Like he's been involved in Leinster rugby for ages. So yeah, it's definitely a position. And like there's two other players in that squad that you could kind of say like Jamie Osborne, Kieran Frawley. Kieran Frawley's played a lot at 12 for Leinster. He definitely could play there. I don't know if Andy Farrell will play him there, but he almost plays better rugby at 12 or has done for Leinster in the last few years. Jamie Osborne, I've always felt that Jamie Osborne's more of a 12 than he's a 15. He's a very good 15, but I think he's just a class 12. So I could see that too. But he probably is going to be the 15 or the back three player. Frawley, as you said, Jill, is definitely there as a 10, so he's probably likely wearing a 22 or 23 shirt. It's interesting to have that center lot in there because even in like the peripheral player, if there is one of that group, is Stuart McCluskey. He's older than Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose, so it's or even if we brought in Tom Farrell, older, like so it's not even like oh, the next level down is 5 or 6 years younger. It's the same age as well. So it really is a huge space. And like you said, we have these players. We have James Hume. We have Jules Postlethwaite. We have Hugh Gavin and Cathal Ford over in Connacht. We have Hugh Cooney in Leinster. We have Dan Kelly now joining in Munster. Like there's loads of players there, and I'm not usually one who's of a mind to say if a player's too old or is getting older, we need to move them on. But the fact that we have so many players ready to go, and then the fact that all four of the players that we currently have in place are going to age out at the same time, it is a bit odd that they haven't mixed and matched a little bit more, just for future proofing in general. And I think if there wasn't the depth behind them, if we didn't have all these really classy players, yeah, in the four provinces, it might be a little bit more understandable. But we do, and I think for me, I think particularly. I don't like to be over negative of player, but like Robbie Henshaw, I think his best rugby is behind him. I think even for Leinster, he hasn't been at the level. He's not as fast as he used to be. He did have a good shot in the Sharks game where he managed to scrag a player as he's getting away from them. But in the process of it, he pulled the muscle in his leg and had to go off. I don't think he's quite at the level. So I think that's a player who maybe you could have gone, okay, well let's bring in James Hume. Let's bring in Hugh Gavin. Let's bring in someone. And yeah, they're not going to start against New Zealand, but maybe they're on the bench, or maybe they play against Japan. To not even have anyone the next rung down in the squad, it just feels like a really odd call, given the age profile of the players involved and the fact that Gary Ringrose hasn't played since he got the head knock against the Lions. There's a player who could have another 4 years in him. But I think, we've had situations with James Ryan. I know we've had it with Caelan Doris, where a player's gotten a head knock and they've gotten given a long time off to get right because you can't mess around with that sort of thing. We just have to take it so seriously when players get head knocks. I don't think it would have been the worst thing in the world if they just said, Gary, you can just sit it out. You can just take them all. If you can play for Leinster, maybe, sure, play for Leinster, but just take he has nothing to prove in an Ireland shirt anymore. I think, you could have left Ringrose and Henshaw out of this squad, brought two younger guys in. If you need to, you can still go Stuart McCluskey at 12, Bundy Aki at 13. Maybe you could have brought Jimmy O'Brien along. He played 13 against South Africa he's played at 13 for Leinster. He's played at 13 for Ireland when they beat South Africa in the Aviva. You could have brought a little bit more of a mix, and you wouldn't have lost out. And I don't think Henshaw, with his career behind him, and I don't think Ringrose, with his injury profile at the moment, would have felt particularly hard done by. The fact that there was no evolution at all and no new players brought in at all. I think we may end up looking back, and like if we win all the games, I think that'll be the ultimate answer. But I think we may end up looking back on this, maybe not in a few months, but maybe in a year or two, and go, God, that was a missed opportunity. We could have given a few lads a go there.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you do look at, like we mentioned it beforehand, James Hume was 27. He'd be 29 at the next World Cup. For a centre of his style, that's his peak. Like, he's not going to peak at 32 when he has like that little bit more, like he's quick, he's agile. Dan Kelly, he's won a premiership, he's played Champions Cup rugby. Jude Postlethwaite last year, easy to forget, like he was one of Ulster's best players in
Yes.
Europe last year in a pool that had Toulon, sorry, Toulouse and Bordeaux in it. And he hasn't got that chance. He hasn't got a single call up since, which is quite remarkable. We'll touch on back three in a minute, but we have to pick our squad for the New Zealand game. Of course we do it now. Why would we do it next week? We said we'd do it now. This is the fun of it. So we can be even more wrong if anyone goes down injured. But gentlemen, this was thrown together. It's a um competent? No, whatever the word is.
Compilation.
Compilation squad. Thank you very much. So not
Yeah.
every single player was named by every single one of us. Porter Sheehan Furlong front row was unanimous. Ian Henderson got in it as second row with Ben and Adam both naming him to start alongside Tyke Byrne, who was unanimous. Tom Ahern got in as well on a 50-50. Josh van der Fleer and Caelan Doris. It's Gibson Park and Jack Crowley. We'll get to that in a minute. Lowe, Aki, Ringrose, Hansen was almost unanimous, bar one selection for Tommy O'Brien. And Jamie Osborne, a fullback, in a 50-50 over Jacob Stockdale. Right, we'll start with second row. Adam, you went with Ian Henderson, as did Ben. Why?
For his defensive prowess, I think defensively this year, not necessarily like carry wise. I think defensively he is still one of the best second rows defensively. I think in the URC. I think he sort of proved that against the Bulls. Um, he can just absorb any tackle, lift up any player. He's still got some brute force in him. So I think for the All Blacks, I feel like you need an Ian Henderson to be there to soak up those tackles when a big player runs at him. Like I'm thinking like a Scott Barrett runs at him, but Ian Henderson can be there to be that brick wall to stop him. So yeah, I picked him on the defensive front. Tag Burn being more the aggressor in attack and also poaching balls. I'd say Ian Henderson's pick there for defensive reasons and also line out reasons as well.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting because you could see Tyke Burns start at six again. Had a good Lions tour at six, although I don't think he had a great Six Nations when he played six, or a great autumn slash Six Nations when he played six. Tom Ahern got in. Um, he was named to start on two sides, so he got in just about ahead of Ryan Baird, who missed out the 23. David, we'll expect Baird to get in, but when it's a choice between Baird and Ahern, it's pretty decent options. I'd love to see Cormac Duke win there. I'd probably have him start myself, but pretty decent choice, pretty flexible, and ideally you'd like to see them both get at least two starts in this window.
Yeah, I think so. I think like I think it's almost funny how not overlooked because obviously it wasn't overlooked, but like the massive hole in the squad left by the absence of Peter Romani. Like there's a man
Yeah.
who like the fact that I still forget sometimes looking at Munster team sheets going, oh yeah, he's not going to be on them anymore. It's just it is weird, and he was such a huge presence in the Ireland squads. Even if you think back to Ireland's win over the All Blacks in 2018, his somehow managing to grab a ball when he could barely walk a minute beforehand, won that game for Ireland. So that the hole that he's left, that's a big hole to step into. Tom Hearn and Ryan Baird between them might just about do it. I think it will be a coin flip up between the two of them. I think Baird has gone quite well at six for Leinster in the at the start of this season. He's lost the headgear. He's roaming free. He's I think nailed down the position as well, which I think helps as well. This is something we will come on to a little bit when we talk about the backs as well. But I think, as you said, Tyburn can play lock and he can play back row as well. I think sometimes that can hurt a player because they end up being second choice in two places rather than first choice in one of them. I think locking down a position as yours is probably a good bet. The benefit of having someone like Ahern or Baird in six is that if something happens to both of your locks, you can go, all right, well, will you move up and we'll bring someone on the back. So that is an extra strength to both to have. But yeah, I think Tom Ahern, like, coin flip for me, I'd probably have Ryan Baird in there. But Ahern at his best is this incredibly fast, loose forward, and I think having someone like him out on the wing as an additional threat would be fantastic. It'll be really interesting to see how he handles the Ireland squad because that's the only thing that's really gotten Tom Hearn's way in the past is not being able to string enough fit minutes together, both at test level and at club level. So yeah, I think it'll be really interesting to watch the two of those trade back and forth, and then to see how I'll be really looking forward to seeing how Nick Timoney goes because he has been so good for Ulster to see. I would like to see him get a start. It'll probably be against probably Japan. I think even Australia, given how well they
I'd
finished
love it. Yeah.
the Lions tour, I don't know, but I think he definitely deserves a start. And if it's going to happen, it'll probably be against Japan. I think I'd like to see that. Josh Van der Fleer also being a great player, but also not being the youngest guy in the world. I think he's 31 or 32. So, yeah, it'd be really good to see that. Caelan Doris, I don't think any of us expect him to be back fit this fast. So it'll be interesting
That's
to
if he
see
is.
if he is. It's a
Yeah.
really weird thing where we have the 23 predicted here. If Caelan Doris isn't fit, the person who takes his place isn't in the 23 currently because it's going to be Jack Conan. Um, which I think at this stage in his career, Jack is probably okay with. He's done it all now too. He's been on Lions tours. He's won Six Nations. He's won Champions Cup. He's won all the medals. If he can just sit in the background and go, if your eight falls over, I'll be your eight. I think that's probably a role he's not that pissed off about filling at this stage. So yeah, I think it's an interesting, and I think going forward it'll be interesting to see who puts pressure on Josh Van der Fleer more because the sixth side is so open. You'll have Tom Ahern, you'll have Ryan Baird, you might have Keane Prendergast, you could have Gavin Coombs, he can play six as well. You could have Tyke Burns slotting back. The seven has been so like kind of locked down to Josh Van der Fleer, and if it wasn't him, it was O'Mahony switching across, or it was Doris switching up to seven. O'Mahony's gone now. If Doris is injured or playing eight, who goes into the seven role? Is it Nick Timoney? Is it Josh? Is it John Hodnett? Who takes that role? I think would be another really interesting one because we have a lot of players who cover can cover 6 and 8. We don't have as much who can cover 7, so I think that'll be an interesting one to watch too.
Well, and as people can see at halfback, we've gone with Gibson Park and Crowley. I think most of us would be unanimous. Well, we were all unanimous in having Gibson Park Crowley start against Chicago or start against New Zealand in Chicago. I think we'd all like to see Casey and Crowley get a proper game together for Ireland as well. So like Australia, for example, and give them the reins there. Um, the funny one is though, like if you say give them both two starts, Gibson Park and Casey. You'd have loved to have seen Nathan Doak get a start or Ben Murphy or
Yeah.
whoever. With Keelan Blade, it's like, well, if he gets a start, great. But also at the same time, there's always that, sense of, oh, it could have been someone younger, which is natural.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't think Blade's there to start.
do you know?
You know, no, I think Blade's there to be a bench option. I think if someone gets hurt, he's there, and so if there's going to be starters, it's going to be if there's two starts each, it's going to be Gibson Park and Casey. I don't think Blade is there to start a game. He's there to cover the bench, which he did well in South Africa. But I don't. If you wanted to start someone else, you would have brought Ben Murphy. You would have brought Nathan Doak. I don't think
Yeah.
Kellen Blade is there to start a game.
Which I have to say, that's such a waste when you think about it, because
Yeah,
when you think about your ideal, I think we spoke about it before. I'm not sure if it was this week or last week, but if you would have had like, you have Gibson Park starts the New Zealand game, Casey starts the Australia game, then you have a Doak or a Ben Murphy in an ideal world starts the Japan game, and then I would argue put Casey in maybe for the Springbok game just to see throw the dice with that. Because at some point we're going to need to throw the dice at something that Andy Farrell isn't comfortable with. And starting Casey in a big game like South Africa is probably going to be that dice that has to be thrown. So, it's one
And
of those that we
this is a
have to.
man, remember, who was on Lions tour form at the back end of the season. Like, it's
yeah,
not even
yeah.
that
It's
much of a
not.
dice
Mhm.
throw.
Yeah, it's not that much of a die draw. Yeah.
But
Well, it's
will
it's
we
a
see?
dice throw in terms of Andy Farrell's
Oh
eyes,
no,
though,
yeah,
because
sorry, not to knock you down, but to kind of
that's
back
what
you
I
up.
mean.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
like what I mean is like I can't see Andy Farrell making that choice,
Hmm.
and that's the choice that we need to see. I feel like Gibson Park is going to play the New Zealand game. Great, cool, I'm okay with that. He does not need to play that Australia game. I would argue that he doesn't need to play that Japan game. The South Africa game, he's probably going to get picked, but having Blade there, it really minimizes that chance that we're going to see Gibson Park play three times, three starts, for example. I cannot see them giving any wiggle room to somebody like Casey with Blade being there
That's
as a
that's the
backup.
thing. That's the thing. And like that's where Andy Farrell is different from Galtier or Razzie Erasmus or
Yeah,
Razor Robertson. He's not a rotator. Like
I know.
Lions tour this year, lads were out in their feet. It's the end of the season. He didn't rotate for the third test. Now the third test took on life of its own. There was a rain delay and there was all that kind of stuff. He doesn't do it. Razzie would, Galtier would, Razor would. That's who Ireland are trying to compete against. Will he is the question. That's his big one. That Australia game for me is the one. I think you could put out a kind of half and half team there. I'm not saying rotate entirely, but maybe you go with Casey and Prendergast as opposed to Casey and Crowley.
Yeah.
Maybe you go with McCluskey and Ringrose, who we haven't seen a lot of. You said yourself, Adam and Ben had Stockdale at 15. Maybe you give Stockdale a run at 15 or have him and Osborne and see if they can kind of cover across between the two of them. Do you know,
Do you know what?
there's all of that.
Yeah, I'd love a back line of Casey, Prendergast, McCluskey, Ringrose, and then a one wing Stockdale. Give Osborne the 15 jersey, and then wing. Maybe it's going to be like a Mac Hansen, but I would love to see that type of backline work because we need to see uncomfortability there. We need to see unfamiliarity, as we say.
Has to
The
happen at some
French
stage, doesn't it?
Well, the French rugby team by choice brought down a C team down to New Zealand. They nearly won their first test. They played exceptionally well. Ireland wouldn't dream of doing that
No,
at all. Like I feel like we're only uncomfortable when players retire, and that's been the case for Ireland for
That's true.
years.
Or
Brian
if we get two
O'Driscoll,
injuries in one position, as we were saying
well,
earlier.
yeah, two injuries in one position. I think I've mentioned this before, but I always think of that 2015 Argentina quarterfinal. We had no Sexton. Ian Madigan was starting. We just absolutely the wheels were completely off. Just everyone was falling off the rails. Everyone was getting injured, but we had no backup. We had no backbone because we rely on these players until they're in. And I'm not being like, as David said, I don't want to be pushing out players because of their age, but we rely on these players like Bundyaki to make big, huge performances, and he does again and again and again. And I am a big Bundyaki fan. However, we can't trust that he's going to make this World Cup. So, we're sacrificing a couple of losses for Test match gain. I feel like it's worth its weight completely in gold than another Six Nations win, another Grand Slam win if we have a slim chance of winning that World Cup the next year, if we have a slim chance of winning the quarter final to get to a semi-final in the World Cup, that would set back home on fire. Like
And
we
and
we
we
wouldn't
could
know what to do with ourselves.
we could get into economics from there, but even just the fact of like Bundyaki, his biggest strength is without Bundyaki, Ireland don't lay a finger on New Zealand in last year's World or
Yeah,
the World Cup 2023. He
yeah,
was a massive reason for the
it was
comeback. The flip
incredible.
side is the downside is the reliance on Bundyaki is if not for Bundyaki, Ireland could have lost to Wales and Cardiff this year, 2 years
Yeah,
later. That's testament to him. But also
yeah,
at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but McCluskey could have got the job done against Wales as well. You'd hope if things had gone right. Obviously, everything kind of went badly in that second half for Ireland. Was part the Ireland chat. Unfortunately, Adam, I'm not going to ask you on this one. I asked you about it the other day. David, you got the blue background behind you. You'll be sitting in seats of blue on Saturday. Croke Park, 5:15, Leinster Munster. The return to GA headquarters. How do you think it is going to go?
I think Munster are going to scare Leinster. I think it's going to be a very fast start. I think I'm a little disappointed I know it's through injury. If Craig Casey can't play, I'll be disappointed just because he's the kind of player that's built for that kind of game. But I think they're gonna come out fast. I think they're gonna come out firing. I wouldn't be surprised to see Munster score first. It'll be very interesting to see the Leinster lads come back in now from the Lions tour. I think Leinster will go full medal jacket, and I think at the end of it all, I think Leinster will come out on top because it's something I think Ben said on yesterday's pod. Leinster need to win this. They need to win it a lot more than Munster need to win it, and that's kind of a scary place to be. And in a way, that's very freeing for Munster. In a way, that almost makes it more likely that Munster do win it because they don't have to play with fear. They can play unshackled, and I think um, that's going to be a really tough thing for Leinster to overcome. I think it's also kind of going to go against Leinster that this will be the first time these players play together this season as well. You know, that the kind of the drip feeding back in of test players. It's always kind of frustrated me because I feel like the summer's pretty long. The Lions tour was ages ago. I don't know why they couldn't play at the start of this season. I think they have enough of a holiday to be honest. But the fact that they're being drip fed back in means that this is going to be the first time this whole squad has played. If it's the squad that we expect it to be, it's going to be the first time they've played together this season. That doesn't always start off super well. If you look at the way Leinster started the season against Stormers, it started really poorly. So, if there are cobwebs to be blown off, they have to be blown off really quickly because I think if Munster sent blood in the water, they're three from three. They're what are they second in the table? They will go for it, hammer and tongs. And if Jack Crowley's on the pitch, if Craig Casey's on the pitch, but even if he's not, they have Alex Nankivell, Dan Kelly, Tom Farrell, whichever combination of those lads in the centre. It could be a really, really rough day for Leinster, in a half-empty stadium, which would not be fun. So I'll be really nervous. Unfortunately, Croke Park has not always been the happiest place for Leinster. Um, if you look back to last year. So it'll be a big match, probably not as big as it should be. I said to you off air, I think it's a mistake to play the game in Croke Park. I don't think there's 82,000 seats worth of tickets to be sold there. I think 52,000 is a perfectly reasonable thing to do for an Interpro. I think the novelty of Croke Park. This is the third season now that rugby's been playing Croke Park. Um, and I think the novelty has worn off a little bit. And I think if we'd taken it back to the Aviva and gotten the Aviva close to sellout, I think that would have been a much better atmosphere. But for the day that's in it, in Croke Park, in Dublin's beautiful north side, I think it's going to be a pretty rocky encounter for Leinster. And while I do think we come out on top, I think I'm going to lose a couple of years off my life watching it.
Well, if we get a contest like that, I don't think anyone's going to complain. But Look, we shall wait and see, gentlemen. My thanks to Adam and to David for joining me this evening. We'll be back next week with URC coverage, just URC coverage for 1 week, and then attention shifts, and it's back into Ireland, and it's the balancing of the books again. But gentlemen, thank you very, very much. Remember, if you like what you see here, please do subscribe. We've gone past 1,000 subscribers. We want to keep on going. Some great podcasts, the URC podcast, Rap, of course, on their channel, South African show as well. So much to dig your teeth into. But from us at the Interpro Show, from us till next time, take it easy.